Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today we are exploring a core teaching on the Buddhist path to liberation from suffering. It's called Right Exertion.
Yes.
And we're diving into excerpts from the Four Right Exertions, The Wings to Awakening from dhammatalks.org.
Okay.
Have you ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels, putting in so much effort but not getting anywhere?
Oh, yeah.
You're working hard, but it's just not leading to where you want to be. Well, it turns out even effort can be skillful or unskillful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just about trying really hard.
Right.
It's about applying effort in a way that actually leads us to be free from suffering.
So, okay, what does right exertion look like?
So the text that we are looking at lays out 4 key aspects of right exertion.
Okay.
First, preventing unskillful qualities from even coming up in the first place.
Okay.
Think of it like stopping negative thoughts before they even kind of take root.
Okay, so like if you notice that little voice of self-doubt creeping in, you just gently redirect your attention.
Exactly. Then abandoning unskillful qualities that already exist, that are already there. It's like weeding a garden, pulling those negative thought patterns out by the root.
Right.
So we're clearing the ground for something new to grow.
Yeah.
The third one would be cultivating skillful qualities. So not just weeding the garden, but now we are planting seeds of positivity and mindfulness. We want to see beautiful flowers bloom there instead.
That makes sense. And what's the last one?
Maintaining those skillful qualities that have already been developed. Tending to the garden.
Gotcha. Tendon.
Nurturing those positive qualities so they can really flourish.
So it's kind of amazing how these 4 aspects work together. It's not step by step, right? Like sometimes focusing on cultivating the positive can naturally help us let go of the negative.
Absolutely. It's all intertwined.
Right.
But there's this really interesting twist that I found in this text.
Okay.
It talks about the role of desire
Oh.
in right exertion.
Really?
Right.
I always thought Buddhism was all about reducing craving and desire.
Yeah, it seems very counterintuitive.
Right. Like how can desire even be a factor in achieving liberation?
It's all about understanding the difference between skillful and unskillful desire.
Okay.
Buddhism doesn't say desire is bad.
Okay.
It encourages us to understand which desires lead us towards freedom and which ones keep us stuck in suffering.
So, okay, can you give me a concrete example? What does a skillful desire look like compared to an unskillful desire?
Yeah, so imagine you've had a big piece of cake
Okay.
and you are full, but you still really crave that second piece of cake.
Yeah.
That's a classic unskillful desire. It's just driven by attachment. It leads to more craving.
Gotcha. So what's an example of skillful desire?
Like a desire to help other people, or maybe like the longing to understand yourself more deeply, to yearn for wisdom and compassion.
Okay.
These are desires that fuel our spiritual growth,
Gotcha.
and they can lead to greater freedom.
So skillful desire is actually a powerful force for good. It's not something to be suppressed.
Right.
It's something to be directed towards something meaningful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, right, exertion is about skillfully harnessing that desire,
Okay.
using it as fuel to cultivate and maintain the qualities that lead to liberation.
Okay. So it's not just about being good or being a good person. It's about going even deeper than that, transcending skillfulness.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where real freedom lies.
Wow, that's a mind-bending concept. So it's not about reaching some static state of perfect behavior.
Right.
It's more about constantly refining our understanding and even letting go of the need to be skillful.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. As we delve deeper into right exertion, we'll see just how nuanced and transformative this practice can be.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper. The text also talks about how the effort itself has to be skillful. What does that mean? Like, can you be putting in effort the wrong way?
Exactly. Unskillful effort can backfire and make things worse.
Okay.
For example, if you try to force yourself to stop being angry,
Yeah.
that often just makes you more angry.
Oh, I've definitely been there. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more you push it down, the harder it's going to pop back up.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. Instead of suppressing those difficult emotions, right exertion encourages us to understand them, to investigate their roots, and practice compassion towards ourselves.
So it's more about working with our minds rather than against them.
Yes.
What kind of tools does right exertion give us to work with?
The text highlights several key tools, including mindfulness, discernment, and even the jhanas, those states of meditative absorption.
Wait, the jhanas. I thought those were all about blissing out, not putting in effort.
It's true that the jhanas involve profound states of peace and joy, but they're cultivated through right effort.
Okay.
They're like training grounds for the mind,
Okay.
refining our attention
Okay.
and deepening our concentration.
So it's like the more we develop these qualities, mindfulness, discernment, the ability to access the jhanas, the more skillful our effort becomes.
Exactly.
It's like this positive feedback loop.
Exactly. It's a ongoing process of refinement and growth.
Okay, so there's one more piece to this puzzle. The text outlines 7 specific ways to abandon unskillful qualities.
Yes.
7 ways. Okay, give me the rundown.
They are seeing, restraining, using, tolerating, avoiding, destroying, and developing.
So we have this whole toolbox of 7 approaches to working with difficult thoughts and emotions.
Exactly.
But the text doesn't specify which tool to use when.
Right. And that's where the real learning begins. It's about developing the discernment to understand what works best for each situation.
So it's like we're being asked to become our own inner scientists.
Yeah.
Experimenting and observing what helps us cultivate greater freedom and well-being.
You got it. And that's what makes right exertion such an empowering practice. It's not about blindly following rules. It's about developing the wisdom to navigate the complexities of our own minds.
This is giving me a lot to think about. But before we move on, one question that keeps popping up for me is there like a right amount of effort we should be putting in? Or does it vary depending on the person and the situation?
That's a great question, and it leads us to another intriguing point in the text. It acknowledges that the amount of effort needed can vary greatly.
You're kidding. It actually says that. For some people, practice can be painful and slow, while for others, it's pleasant and quick.
Yes, the Buddha recognized that people are different, and the same practice can have different effects on different people.
So there's no magic formula, no one-size-fits-all approach to right exertion.
That's right, there isn't.
That's both challenging and liberating at the same time.
Yes, it is.
It challenges us to pay attention to our own inner landscape,
Right?
and to adjust our efforts accordingly.
Exactly.
There's no room for dogma or rigidity in right exertion.
That's right.
This is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about effort. It's so much more nuanced than I realized. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more piece of the text that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
And that is the idea that right exertion isn't about returning to a childlike state of mind.
Ah, yes, that's a common misconception about spiritual practice.
Really?
Many people assume that the goal is to recapture the purity and innocence of childhood.
I have to admit, I kind of thought that was the goal too. What's wrong with aiming for that childlike state of mind?
Well, from a Buddhist perspective, the child's mind, while seemingly pure, is actually full of ignorance. It lacks the wisdom and discernment that come with experience and conscious development.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not about regressing, it's about evolving consciously.
Exactly. Right, exertion isn't about going backwards. It's about refining and developing our minds so that we can fully awaken to our true potential.
This is blowing my mind wide open. Okay, so if the childlike mind isn't the ultimate goal of right exertion, what is?
Well, to answer that, we need to explore another fascinating passage from the text. It involves a dialogue between the Buddha and a diva about the art of crossing the flood.
Crossing the flood, that sounds intriguing. Can't wait to hear more about that.
This passage about crossing the flood, it really gets to the heart of how we often misunderstand effort.
Okay, yeah, I'm all ears. Remind me, how does that story go again?
So the Buddha is asked how he crossed over the flood.
Right.
And his answer is anything but straightforward. He says, I crossed over the flood without pushing forward, without staying in place.
Okay.
And when pressed for details, he adds, when I pushed forward, I was whirled about. When I stayed in place, I sank.
That's a pretty cryptic answer. How can you cross a flood without either moving forward or staying still?
It's brilliant, really. The Buddha is pointing out that our usual ways of thinking about effort as either like striving really intensely
Right.
or becoming passive,
Yeah.
those are actually traps.
Okay.
They don't lead to true liberation.
So it's not about finding the perfect middle ground.
Not exactly. It's about transcending that binary thinking altogether. The image of crossing the flood points to a state of balanced awareness,
Okay.
where we're neither rigidly pushing nor passively allowing ourselves to be swept away
Yeah.
by the current of our thoughts and emotions.
So it's more about finding a flow state, like we're engaged with what's happening but not attached to the outcome.
Yeah,
So we're putting in the effort, but there's a sense of ease or non-striving.
that's a great way to put it, yeah. And this state of balanced awareness, it's not something we achieve once and for all.
Right.
It's something that we cultivate through the ongoing practice of right exertion.
So it's not like reaching the other side of the river and being done. We're constantly navigating the flow, finding that sweet spot between effort and ease.
Precisely. And this skillful navigation is what ultimately leads to liberation.
Okay.
It's about freeing ourselves from the very thing that causes us to struggle, to push and pull, to stink or be swept away.
This is making me realize that, right, exertion isn't just about like meditating for hours on end. It's about bringing that same quality of mindful
Right?
awareness and skillful effort to everything we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about infusing our everyday lives,
Right.
our relationships, our work, our interactions with the world, with that same spirit of mindful engagement,
You know, those 7 ways of abandoning unskillful qualities you mentioned earlier,
right?
they're starting to make a lot more sense now in light of this crossing the flood analogy.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Those 7 ways, seeing, restraining, using, tolerating, avoiding, destroying, and developing,
Okay.
those become our tools for navigating that flood of our experience.
So sometimes we need to restrain ourselves from negative patterns, sometimes we need to actively cultivate positive qualities, and sometimes we simply need to observe and tolerate what's happening without getting swept away by it.
Exactly. And the key is to use discernment, to choose the most skillful approach for each moment. It's about responding to life's challenges with wisdom and compassion rather than reacting habitually.
That makes sense. But honestly, I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of either over-efforting or under-efforting. Like sometimes I get so fixated on trying to fix things
Right.
that I just create more stress.
Yeah.
And other times I just want to check out and avoid dealing with things altogether.
It's a common struggle, and it highlights why cultivating mindfulness and discernment is so essential to right exertion.
Right.
These qualities help us find that middle path, that balanced approach to effort, where we're neither overly striving nor passively giving up.
So it's like we need to constantly be checking in with ourselves, asking, what's the most skillful way to respond to this situation right now?
Yes,
What does right exertion look like in this moment?
you nailed it. Yeah. It's an ongoing process of self-reflection
Okay.
and adjustment. It's about becoming more attuned to our inner landscape and responding to life's challenges with wisdom and compassion.
You mentioned earlier that the jhanas, those states of meditative absorption, are also important tools for right exertion, but I'm still a little fuzzy on how they fit into this picture.
That's a great question. The jhanas are often misunderstood as being solely about blissful states of mind,
Right?
but they actually play a really vital role in cultivating right exertion.
So there's more to it than just feeling good.
Exactly. The jhanas are developed through sustained, skillful effort.
Okay.
They refine our minds, making them more stable, clear, and receptive.
Okay.
And this refined state of mind makes it easier to see things clearly and to respond to challenges with greater skill and ease.
So the jhanas help us to cultivate those very qualities: mindfulness, discernment, balanced effort,
Yes,
that are essential for navigating the flood of our experience.
precisely. They're like a training ground for the mind, helping us to develop the inner strength and clarity needed to live a life of greater freedom and well-being.
Wow, that's a powerful insight. The jhanas aren't just about seeking blissful states, but about training our minds to be more skillful in all aspects of life.
Exactly. They empower us to respond to life challenges with greater wisdom and compassion rather than reacting habitually.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. We've got the 4 aspects of right exertion,
Yeah.
the importance of skillful desire,
Yes.
the art of navigating the flood,
Right.
the 7 ways of working with unskillful qualities, and the transformative power of the jhanas.
It's all interconnected, right? Exertion is a holistic practice, encompassing all aspects of our being.
Okay.
It's about bringing a quality of conscious awareness and skillful effort to every moment of our lives.
It's not just about sitting on a cushion and meditating. It's about living our lives with intention, wisdom, and compassion.
You got it. Yeah. It's about waking up to the fullness of our potential and living in a way that reflects that awakening.
Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more passage from the text I wanted to touch on. It outlines 5 key factors that support right exertion: conviction, health, honesty, persistence, and discernment.
Ah, yes. Those 5 factors are like pillars that support our practice, reminding us of the qualities we need to cultivate in order to walk this path with resilience and clarity.
I love that analogy. So let's break these down one by one. What does conviction mean in the context of right exertion?
Conviction refers to having faith in the path, a deep trust in the teachings, and a belief in the possibility of awakening.
Okay.
It's not blind faith. It's a reasoned confidence that comes from seeing the fruits of the practice in our own lives and in the lives of others.
So it's about trusting the process even when things get tough.
Exactly. And that trust is fueled by experience. As we practice right exertion, we begin to see firsthand the transformative power of this path.
Okay, that makes sense. What about health? Why is that so important for right exertion?
Well, if we are physically or mentally unwell, it can be incredibly difficult to generate and sustain effort. Think about it. If you're exhausted or in pain, you're not going to have the energy or focus needed to practice right exertion.
It's like trying to climb a mountain with a broken leg.
Exactly. Taking care of our physical and mental well-being is essential for supporting our practice. It provides the foundation we need to engage in right exertion.
Okay, what about honesty? How does that factor into right exertion?
Honesty is about being truthful with ourselves and others about where we are on the path. It's about acknowledging our strengths and weaknesses, our successes and our struggles.
So it's about dropping the pretense and being authentic.
Precisely. Pretense only creates more suffering.
Okay.
It prevents us from seeing ourselves clearly and from receiving the support we need.
So honesty helps us to stay grounded in reality.
Exactly.
Okay. What about persistence? I think we all know what that means, sticking with it even when the going gets tough.
You got it. Persistence is about cultivating a quality of determination and resilience. It's about remembering why we are practicing in the first place and not giving up on ourselves or the path.
Right. Exertion is a marathon, not a sprint, right? It requires patience
Yeah,
and a willingness to keep going even when we stumble.
that's a great way to put it. And finally, we have discernment.
Right.
We've talked about this quite a bit already.
Yeah.
But can you remind us why it's so important for right exertion? Discernment is the ability to see clearly, to distinguish between skillful and unskillful thoughts, actions, and intentions. It's like having a wise inner compass that guides our choices and helps us navigate the complexities of life.
So it's what helps us choose the right tool from that toolbox
Exactly.
of 7 ways to abandon unskillful qualities.
Exactly. Discernment is what allows us to respond to each moment with wisdom and skill.
This has been a truly illuminating exploration of right exertion. I feel like I'm starting to understand what it means to put in effort the right way.
And that understanding is the foundation for embodying this practice in our lives.
Absolutely. It's one thing to know about right exertion. It's another to actually live it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into right exertion,
Right.
what are some key takeaways that our listeners can apply to their own lives?
Yeah, that's a good question. What are some things that really stood out to you? What do we want people to take away from this?
Well, one of the biggest things I think is that right exertion is an ongoing practice.
Okay,
It's not a destination.
gotcha.
It's a process of, weaving mindful awareness,
Right.
clear intention,
Yeah.
and skillful action into every aspect of our lives.
So it's not about reaching some perfect state of, effortlessness or something.
Right, exactly.
It's more about showing up each day.
Yes,
And making conscious choices that align with our values and what we're trying to cultivate.
absolutely. And it requires a willingness to experiment, to pay attention to what works and what doesn't work for us,
Right.
and to adapt our approach accordingly. Each person's journey is unique. So what works for one person might not work for another.
And we can't forget about the role of skillful desire, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding that desire itself isn't the problem. It's about harnessing our desires and directing them towards something meaningful
Yes.
that contributes to our own well-being and the well-being of others.
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's about transforming desire from a source of suffering into a source of positive change.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. The same energy that can fuel addictive behaviors can also fuel our deepest aspirations.
Right.
It's all about where we choose to direct that energy.
I also love that image of crossing the flood without pushing forward or staying in place.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
It's such a good reminder to find that middle path, that balanced approach to effort, where we're neither overly striving nor passively resigning ourselves to the currents of life.
It really speaks to the heart of right exertion, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot where we're engaged with what's happening, we're putting in effort, but we're also allowing things to unfold naturally without forcing or resisting.
And remembering those 5 factors for exertion, health, honesty, persistence, and discernment can provide a roadmap for cultivating and sustaining this practice.
Exactly. Those 5 factors are like pillars that support our efforts, reminding us of the qualities we need to cultivate to walk this path with resilience and clarity.
It's almost like having a checklist to refer to when we feel lost or discouraged.
Yeah.
We can ask ourselves, do I have conviction in the path? Am I taking care of my health? Am I being honest with myself? Am I persisting even when things get tough? Am I using discernment to guide my choices?
Those are really powerful questions to reflect on.
Right.
And if we find that we're lacking in one of those areas, we can focus our energy on cultivating that particular quality.
So if our listeners are feeling stuck, or frustrated, like they're putting in a lot of effort but not getting anywhere,
Right.
what would you recommend?
Well, I would encourage them to reflect on these teachings
Okay.
and ask themselves, where in my life could I apply right exertion right now? What would skillful effort look like in this particular situation?
So maybe it's about setting healthy boundaries in a relationship, or finally committing to that daily meditation practice we've been putting off.
Yeah, or maybe it's simply about bringing more awareness to our thoughts, words, and actions throughout the day. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. Even small shifts in our awareness and intention can make a big difference over time.
I think it's also important to remember that this is a lifelong journey, right? There will be times when we fall short,
Of course.
when we get caught up in old patterns,
Absolutely.
when we feel discouraged or lost.
Yeah, that's part of the process.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, the key is to not judge ourselves when we stumble, but to simply acknowledge what's happening, learn from it, and keep moving forward. Remember that self-compassion is an essential ingredient in right exertion.
That's a beautiful reminder. It's not about being perfect,
Right.
but about showing up with an open heart and a willingness to learn and grow.
Exactly.
So much of this path is about cultivating kindness and patience,
Yeah.
both toward ourselves and others.
Yeah,
Right? Exertion isn't about forcing ourselves to become something we're not. It's about uncovering our true nature, our innate capacity for wisdom and compassion,
right.
and allowing that to shine through.
That's it.
This has been such an inspiring and thought-provoking deep dive into right exertion. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this profound teaching,
Yeah,
but I'm already feeling a renewed sense of purpose and possibility.
I feel the same way. It's amazing how revisiting familiar teachings can spark new insights and inspire us to deepen our practice.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. I know our listeners are going to walk away from this deep dive feeling empowered and inspired to put these teachings into practice.
It's been my pleasure. May we all continue to explore this path of right exertion with courage, curiosity, and a deep commitment to awakening.
And until next time, keep diving deep.